Hello students, welcome to English e-learning class 12. Today we'll study our first chapter of Vista's book. The name of the chapter is The Third Level. Third Level. This chapter is written by the author Jack Finney. Walter Braden Jack Finney, he was born on 2nd October 1911 and he died on November 14, 1995. He was an American author. His best known works are science fiction and thriller. This chapter, Third Level. This chapter is about the harsh realities of war. And you know that war has irreversible consequences and that makes people in a state of insecurity. The chapter symbolizes man's innermost and deepest desire to escape from the world full of tensions, war, insecurity, and fear. It stands for man's pursuit for life full of peace and tranquility, in contrast to the materialistic world. The main characters of the chapter are Charlie, main protagonist, his wife Louisa, Charlie's wife, and Sam, a psychiatrist. So let's begin this chapter. The presidents of the New York Central and the New York, New Haven and Hartford railroads will swear on a stack of timetables that there are only two, but I say there are three because I have been on the third level of the Grand Central Station. The story begins with a mention of a third level at the Grand Central Station. Actually, this Grand Central Station has only two levels in real. But the protagonist Charlie, he himself is aware that even the presidents of New York Central and New York, New Haven and Hartford railroads would express great confidence in the existence of only two levels, but he himself has been to the third level. Everybody says there are two levels, but he says that there are three levels, though he is knowing there are only two levels, but he went to third level. Yes, I have taken the obvious step. I talked to a psychiatrist friend of mine, among others. I told him about the third level at Grand Central Station and he said it was a waking dream wish fulfillment. Now, considering this entire scenario, Charlie, the protagonist, had a talk with his psychiatrist friend. Then his friend explained to Charlie that it was a waking dream wish fulfillment. Means it is a hallucination. He wants whatever he wants, he is dreaming. According to the psychiatrist, Charlie is dreaming something whatever he is willing. He said, I was unhappy. That made my wife kind of mad. But he explained that he meant the modern world is full of insecurity, fear, war, worry and all the rest of it. That I just want to escape. Well, who doesn't? Everybody I know wants to escape, but they don't wander down into any third level at Grand Central Station. According to psychiatrists, Charlie was unhappy. He tends to escape the reality because of worry, insecurity, tension, and Charlie agreed with whatever his friend psychiatrist was saying. He said everyone wants to escape, but he said that he walked to third level to the Grand Central Station. Means he is telling that everybody is willing to escape from this world, but he is wondering, he went into the third level station at Grand Central. But that's the reason, he said, and my friends all agreed. Everything points to it, they claim. My stamp collecting, for example, that's a contemporary refuge from reality. Well, maybe, but my grandfather didn't need any refuge from the reality. Things were pretty nice and peaceful in his day, from all I hear, and he started my collection. It's a nice collection too. Blocks of four of practically every US issue, first day covers, and so on. President Roosevelt collected stamps too, you know. Charlie begins to believe in the possibility that he has been experiencing all this to escape the harsh realities of the modern world. Even his friends agreed to it as well. And his stamp collecting is a sort of asylum he resorts in order to feel protected to escape from this world. On the other hand, he starts thinking his grandfather started stamp collection in those days. Though that time there was peace and harmony and security, then also they were collecting stamps. And his grandfather was not insecure. He was secure that time and he was in a peaceful atmosphere. He says President Roosevelt also collected stamps, and collection of the US issue, collection of the first day covers means when the new stamp is released and when once it is posted on the first time it is posted on the envelope, and collecting from the first envelope, that is first day covers. So like this was a hobby to escape from the world or the worries. This was done in the previous day, and now Charlie is also willing to escape. That's why maybe he is in the third level. Anyway, here's what happened at Grand Central. One night, last summer, I worked late at the office. I was in a hurry to get uptown to my apartment. So I decided to take the subway from Grand Central because it's faster than the bus. Now Charlie starts explaining what exactly happened at Grand Central. One night, it was summer, and he worked late in the office, and already it was late. He was in a hurry to reach to his apartment, to his house, and he decided to take subway path from Grand Central because that will be faster than the bus, so that he can reach early and he can save his time. Now, I don't know why this should have happened to me. I am just an ordinary guy named Charlie, 31 years old, and I was wearing a tan gabardine suit and a straw hat with a fancy band. I passed a dozen men who looked just like me, and I wasn't trying to escape from anything. I just wanted to get home to Louisa, my wife. Here he describes himself as an ordinary man, and his age is 31 years. He is dressed in a tan gabardine suit, that is a type of cloth, and he was wearing a straw hat with a fancy band. He was so ordinary that he could see other similar men at the station. He explains how he was in his normal state of mind. He was not wanting to escape from anywhere. All he wanted to be with his wife Louisa at that hour. He wanted to reach home early. He still doesn't understand why this has happened to him, where he has reached, and he is confused. I turned into Grand Central from Vanderbilt Avenue and went down the steps to the first level, where you take trains like the 20th century. Then I walked down another flight to the second level, where the suburban trains leave from, ducked into an arched doorway heading for the subway, and got lost. That's easy to do. I have been in and out of Grand Central hundreds of times, but I'm always bumping into new doorways and stairs and corridors. Once I got into a tunnel about a mile long and came out in the lobby of the Roosevelt Hotel. Another time I came up in an office building on 46th Street, 3 blocks away. Here Charlie entered the Grand Central from Vanderbilt Avenue and he took the stairs to the first level where one could board trains like the 20th century. Then he went down another floor to reach the second level from where he can get suburban trains. From there he entered an arched doorway and he got lost. It was nothing unusual for him because every time whenever he was going he had come to that station many times. There were occasions he run into new corridors and doorways, means whenever he was moving to different corridors, new doors. Once he entered the wrong lobby and then he reached to Roosevelt Hotel and another time in an office building which was on 46th Street, 3 blocks away. Sometimes I think Grand Central is growing like a tree, pushing out new corridors and staircases like roots. There's probably a long tunnel that nobody knows about feeling its way under the city right now, on its way to Times Square and maybe ender to Central Park. And maybe because for so many people through the years, Grand Central has been an exit, a way of escape. Maybe that's how the tunnel I got into, but I never told my psychiatrist friend about that idea. He wondered that Grand Central was expanding at a very fast rate, just like a tree with its roots. There is a long tunnel and they have a secret tunnel under the city to the Times Square, that is a place, or maybe the Central Park. He feels it might be because Grand Central is a place of exit for innumerable people. He says he also managed to escape reality, so he reached to the tunnel. He is also accepting, maybe he is wants to escape from the reality, that's why he has also reached to that tunnel. And although, but same thing he has never shared with his psychiatrist friend. The corridor I was in began angling left and slanting downward, and I thought that was wrong, but I kept on walking. Here he says the unusual corridor he had entered into began angling left, moving in a different direction left side and slanting downward, which he felt very odd. He understood that he is on a wrong path, and but he kept on walking. All I could hear was the empty sound of my own steps, and I didn't pass a soul. When he was moving from that place, there was no one except him, only the voice of his feet was echoing in the corridor. Then I heard that sort of hollow roar ahead, that means open spaces and people talking. The tunnel turned sharp left. I went down a short flight of stairs and came out on the third level at a Grand Central station. Then he finally heard the sound of people talking from a distance. Then he took a left and walked down the stairs again, only to reach the third level of the Grand Central. For just a moment, I thought I was back on the second level, but I saw the room was smaller. There were fewer ticket windows and train gates, and the information booth in the center was wood and old looking. And the man in the booth wore a green eye shade and long black sleeve protectors. The lights were dim and short of flickering. Then I saw why. They were open flame gas lights. Here he thought he had somehow made his way back to the second level. But as he noticed, the room was smaller. There were few ticket windows and train gates. And the information booth in the center was wood and it was looking very old. The man in the booth was also different and the station was little bit dim lit as there were open flame gas lights. Means there was no tube light or you can say but there was open flame gas lights. There were brass spittoons on the floor, and across the station a glint of light caught my eye. A man was pulling a gold watch from his vest pocket. He snapped open the cover, glanced at his watch, and frowned. He wore a derby hat, a black four-button suit with tiny lapels, and he had a big black handlebar mustache. Then I looked around and saw that everyone in the station was dressed like 1890 something. I never saw so many beards, sideburns, and fancy mustaches in my life. A woman walked in through the train gate. She wore a dress with a leg of mutton sleeves and skirts to the top of her high buttoned shoes. Back of her, out on the tracks, I caught a glimpse of a locomotive, a very small Courier and Ives locomotive with a funnel shaped stack, and then I knew. Here Charlie could see brass buttons everywhere when suddenly a glimpse of light caught his eye and he saw a man who was pulling his gold watch from the vest. He was dressed in an old fashioned style. He was wearing a derby hat, wearing a black suit, and he had a big black mustache. Suddenly he noticed that everyone was dressed like the 19th century. He had never seen such type of people who were having beards, sideburns, and fancy mustaches in a fancy way. He noticed the dresses of ladies that was different. One of the lady who walked through the train gate, she was wearing a skirt with a tight fitting lower and high button shoes. He even saw a very small Courier and Ives locomotive. It is a brand of locomotive which made him sure about which he is in. It was basically the time before deadly wars. Now he understood actually where he is in means when he is in third level he is in 1894. To make sure I walked over to a newsboy, glanced at the stack of papers at his feet. It was The World, and The World hasn't been published for years. The lead story said something about President Cleveland. I have found that front page since in the public library files and it was printed June 11, 1894. Now Charlie he says for confirmation he walked towards that newsboy who was selling newspaper. He just have a glance over the stack of newspapers that was kept there and the name of the newspaper was The World. And he knows that this newspaper, The World, hasn't been published for many years. And the lead story on the top of the page of this newspaper, story of President Cleveland was there. Then he found that front page since in the public library. He went to public library. In that files he could see that newspaper and the date printed on the newspaper was June 11, 1894. So he understood that the newspaper The World is of the time 1894. I turned toward the ticket windows, knowing that here on the third level at Grand Central I could buy tickets that would take Louisa and me anywhere in the United States we wanted to go in the year 1894, and I wanted 2 tickets to Galesburg, Illinois. Immediately, he went to the ticket window to get the tickets of Galesburg, Illinois for his wife and for him. Then, have you ever been there? It's a wonderful town still with a big old frame houses, huge lawns, and tremendous trees whose branches meet overhead and roof the streets. And in 1894, summer evenings were twice as long, and people sat out on their lawns, the men smoking cigars and talking quietly, the women waving palm leaf fans with the fireflies all around, in a peaceful world. To be back there with the First World War still 20 years off and World War II over 40 years in the future, I wanted 2 tickets for that. Here, author describes the wonderful town having a lot of greenery. He explains a big old frame houses having big lawns. There are tremendous trees and branches meeting overhead and covering the streets. And in 1894, he describes the 2 world wars took place, and the evenings were twice as long as they are now. Means evening time was longer, and men and women, they were living quietly with peace and serenity. They were enjoying life, sitting together, they were smoking, talking quietly, and women had waving palm leaf fans and with the fireflies all around in a peaceful world. Means here author wants to describe that people were living peacefully. Charlie says it will take 20 years for the First World War. He says here First World still 20 years off, and after 20 years next World War will be there. Means in the future, from that time it will take 40 years for the Second World War. Means for the First World War it will take 20 years and the 40 years for the Second World War. So he wanted 2 tickets for that. The clerk figured the fare. He glanced at my fancy hatband, but he figured the fare, and I had enough for 2 coach tickets one way. But when I counted out the money and looked up, the clerk was staring at me. He nodded at the bills. That ain't money, mister, he said, and if you are trying to skin me, you won't get very far. And he glanced at the cash drawers beside him. Of course, the money was old style bills, half again as big as the money we use nowadays, and different looking. I turned away and got out fast. There's nothing nice about jail, even in 1894. He says here, as the clerk calculated the fare, he looked at Charlie. Charlie was wearing fancy hatband. Charlie just had enough for one-sided journey only. Whatever money he was having, it was for only one-sided journey. When he took out money, the clerk informed him that this is not the acceptable legal amount, and by chance if he is trying to make him fool or he is trying to be smart, then he won't be able to get away with it. He glanced at his cash drawers and realized that currency used back then was different and almost double the size. Then he ran out because he didn't want to go to jail, because he was having different currency and the clerk was asking different currency. He wanted to be safe, that's why he ran away from that place. And that was that. I left the same way I came, I suppose. Next day, during lunch hour, I drew $300 out of the bank, nearly all we had, and bought old style currency that really worried my psychiatrist friend. You can buy old money at almost one coin dealers, but you have to pay a premium. My $300 bought less than 200 in old style bills, but I didn't care. X were 13 cents a dozen in 1894. Then Charlie wanted two tickets. The day ended after he came out. The next day, he went to withdraw his entire saving and got them converted into old money by paying some amount of premium. It cost him much and even worried his psychiatrist friend, but he still went with it. He had exchanged the money, and then he says, eggs cost 13 cents a dozen, means for him in that age it was cheap. But I have never again found the corridor that leads to the third level at Grand Central Station, although I have tried often enough. Charlie here says, unfortunately, he could never find the way to the third level corridor again, despite he had tried many times to get that third level, but he could not find. Louisa was pretty worried when I told her all this and didn't want me to look for the third level anymore. And after a while, I stopped. I went back to my stamps, but now we were both looking every weekend because now we have proof that the third level is still there. My friend Sam Wiener disappeared. Nobody knew where, but I sort of suspected because Sam's city boy and I used to tell him about Gettysburg. I went to school there and he always said he liked the sound of the place, and that's where he is all right in 1894. His wife Louisa was pretty worried when she got to know about it all, about the third level and how he has exchanged the money and he wanted two tickets. After a while, he went back to finding distractions with the help of stamps. He was again busy in the stamp collection. Somehow, that time, psychiatrist Sam, he disappeared. Then Charlie suspected that he had gone to Gettysburg. Sam was a city boy, and Charlie used to tell him about Gettysburg, stories of Gettysburg. And when Charlie told about school at Gettysburg, then he liked the place. He used to say that the place is nice. Maybe now Sam has reached to Gettysburg. Now Charlie was doubtful in that case, means definitely Sam is in Gettysburg in the time space of 1894. Because one night, fussing with my stamp collection, I found, well, do you know what a first day cover is? When a new stamp is issued, stamp collectors buy some and use them to mail envelopes to themselves on the very first day of sale, and the postmark proves the date. The envelope is called the first day cover. They are never opened, you just put blank paper in the envelope. One night, Charlie was concerned about stamp collection. He came across the first day cover. Now, you should know what is first day cover. Here, Charlie is describing. It is an envelope with a stamp. Means one stamp is sticked on the envelope, and that stamp collectors, the person who is interested to collect the stamp, the person mails to himself on the first day of its sale to mark the date, so that he is knowing on which day it is released. And they are just blank inside. In that envelope, it is blank, and they are not to be opened because it is blank. Only one blank paper is kept inside the envelope. That is known as here first day cover, that is having a new stamp. That night, among my oldest first day covers, I found one that shouldn't have been there, but there it was. It was there because someone had mailed it to my grandfather at his home in Gettysburg. That's what the address on the envelope said. And it had been there since July 18, 1894. The postmark showed that, yet I didn't remember it all. The stamp was a 6-cent, dull brown with a picture of President Garfield. Naturally, when the envelope came to Granddad in the mail, it went right into his collection and stayed there till I looked it out and opened it. That night, Charlie found one of his grandfather's old first day covers, and he was surprised to see a first day cover which was unexpected. Someone had mailed it to his father at his home at Gettysburg, as he saw from the address on the envelope. The postmark showed that it has been there since July 18, 1894. The stamp had a picture of President Garfield on it, and the amount of the stamp was 6 cents. It was dull brown color stamp. His grandfather had put it in his stamp collection because he was a person who liked stamp collection, and the Charlie now discovered it and he just opened the envelope. The paper inside wasn't blank. It read 941 Willard Street, Gettysburg, Illinois, July 18, 1894. Charlie, I got to wishing that you were right. Then I got to believing you were right. And Charlie, it's true. I found the third level. I have been here 2 weeks. And right now, down the street at the Dailies, someone is playing a piano and they are all out on the front porch singing, seeing Nellie home. And I am invited over for lemonade. Come on back, Charlie and Louisa. Keep looking till you find the third level. It's worth it. Believe me. The paper inside the envelope was not blank. Something was written in the paper, in that letter, and what was written, that is described. Address was given. It was from Gettysburg and the place is Illinois, and date was 18th July 1894. The letter is written to Charlie. It talked about how the writer wished his third level story, means whatever Charlie said about the story, someone is believing here. He believed that it was true. He had found the third level, the person who has written the letter, and had been there for 2 weeks. Means that person is in the place for 2 weeks. He describes the place he was at that time. He says someone was playing piano, people were singing in the porch, and he was invited there for lemonade. He asks Charlie and Louisa to never stop searching for third level, and he invites them, he says them to come back to third level. The note is signed Sam. At the stamp and coin store I go to, I found out that Sam bought $800 worth of old style currency that ought to set him up in a nice little hay, feed and grain business. He always said that's what he really wished he could do, and he certainly can't go back to his old business, not in Gettysburg, Illinois, in 1894. His old business, why, Sam was my psychiatrist. Here the letter has been signed off as Sam because it was written by Sam only. Means Sam has written letter to Charlie and he told that third level exists and you should come to third level. Charlie found out from the coin store that he used to visit. He found that Sam had bought old currency worth $800, which was to be utilized in a hay, feed and grain business, which he always wished to do. Means it was his will to start this business of grains and feeding, hay and feed of the animals. He could not go back to his old business, certainly not in Gettysburg, Illinois. because he is a psychiatrist. And the story ends at a mysterious note where Charlie is wondering that Sam is psychiatrist. The reason for this would be that he can't be a psychiatrist because in 1894 that time would be free of worries and tension, and there will not be any need of psychiatrists. So he has started a different business of grains. So this is the end of the lesson, the third level. Thank you.